Good morning, Toastmasters. Great meeting this morning. I think one of the interesting things from my perspective is about how we're all adapting to doing this remotely, doing it on Zoom, and the perils thereof of adapting to this new medium. First up, we had our president, Sabrina, who I think did a great, we get the emails every week, which I think is a great topic and leads in nicely to this morning, where she talked about Daniel Kahneman and the effect of facial expressions, and led us through one of those exercises where we made funny faces at the camera. And I think these are a bit silly, but I think they have the desired effect that they get us engaged with it. They break off the shackles, particularly at this early hour of the morning. Another thing Sabrina did, which I'm trying to do now, is look at the camera and not look at the screen, because I think that really does create the eye contact sensation that we so often lose when doing these meetings on Zoom. A suggestion for Sabrina would be, if you unmute everybody, that we remute everybody again at the end. Certainly as we moved into the meeting, a lot of people unmuted, and because I had my screen and speaker view, actually a lot of people coming on and off the screen unintentionally. So that would be my suggestion for Sabrina. Moving on to our Toastmaster, Lynn. I think Lynn came onto screen with great energy, said, "Good morning," and I love that warm approach into the meeting. She also described herself as a tech moron, and then proceeded to talk us through some of the finer details of Zoom. And I think that's a really nice way to frame it. I think it's, if you start off by saying, you know, this isn't something I'm brilliant at, and then you explain something, it doesn't make anyone feel inferior. You're not coming from a position that I know everything, and I think that was a really nice way to frame that. I think some feedback for Lynn might be to potentially stand up. I think as a Toastmaster, you're the sort of the focal point of the meeting. I appreciate I am sitting down as well, a potential a potential point there. And another thing I noticed was Lynn quite often had her hand just in frame like this, which was a little bit distracting. So potentially something to think about there. I think Lynn's theme around the normal and what we're looking forward to getting back to was a really strong theme, and her marshalling of the table topic, saying, you know, one more table topic and then we're enough. Great to be keeping an eye on that. Going to talk about Dan as timekeeper as well, but on a similar theme. This is a pre-work meeting. A lot of us have places to be at work and things otherwise. So in concert with the Toastmaster and the timekeeper, really good job this morning of keeping on top of the time. Moving on to Dan and timekeeping, I think he gave very clear instruction about what he was going to do and the responsibilities of his role. I did enjoy his note that he was going to be strict, and after 10 seconds after the red, he was going to start clapping. Any of you will know when I'm timekeeper, I'm very quick to the bell, so I strongly endorse that as an approach. Some feedback, not necessarily for Dan, but for the role in this medium. I find that if I have the speaker view on, then I can't necessarily see the timekeeper. And if I pin the timekeeper, then I can't necessarily see the speaker. And if I have it on the gallery view, these people aren't necessarily on the same page. So while I applaud the use of technology, using the green, the orange, the red background, I think potentially something oral would help as well, so that we can hear that, so we can pin the speaker, but still be aware of what the timekeeper is doing. Other than that, great performance from Dan. Moving on to Collier, our guest host. I loved how Collier started off by saying about his benefit and why Toastmasters was a useful thing to him, and how that was helping him to continue to learn. I think for a guest who is new to Toastmasters altogether, potentially doesn't necessarily know a lot about what we're doing here. So I think great to have that as being the introduction, and having it explained why it's a useful thing and why it's good and why he sees the benefit in that. We did run out of time, so my suggestion to Collier and to other guest hosts is potentially look at the window of time that you have, divide that by the number of guests, and work out how long each guest can speak for, so that we can get through everybody, and then potentially frame your question so that if we only have 5 seconds, that we just do something really short. What's your favorite color? So that we can get through everybody. But I think I did like as well that Collier wound up at the end by saying, if you enjoy the meeting and you're interested in carrying on, you should talk to Mario, our Vice President of Membership. Gave a call to action for any guests who did enjoy the meeting for what they should do next. Moving on to Robert, who was our table topics master. I think Robert again did a great job of explaining why table topics was useful. I think if you're a guest and you don't know, then it might seem a bit arbitrary that you're getting called up to pick on some random topic. So I think really useful that he said, you know, this is useful for when you're in meetings or interviews or any of these situations in life. I think Robert's topics were fun and immediately approachable, and he recovered nicely from a little technical hiccup there. I particularly enjoyed Sybil's table topic about not getting married. As someone who's just got married myself, that was an interesting perspective. Bianca, our table topics evaluator, I think it was great that Bianca opened up by saying that she was going to be harsh on Delhi and explained why. I think for our guests and for our new members, nice to know that we're holding our long-term members, our accomplished speakers, to a higher bar so that we can continue to improve without appearing too aggressive and too stern on new members. So I think she walked that line perfectly. I think there's some great feedback here again around the technical issues. So the camera positioning for Josh, you know, there was too much ceiling and things of that nature. I think that's great feedback in this modern time of trying to do these meetings on Zoom. Moving on to our interviewer, Mark Hanley. So I think Mark did a great job here of on a few fronts. I think by asking, how did you feel? You know, I think we're all interested in things that engage our senses in one way or another. So I think, you know, asking Nina how she felt about her early time at Burger King helped us understand the psychology, you know, some of the emotion that she was feeling, and allowed us to step into that world a little bit more. I also really like that Mark was not afraid to sort of go for the jugular a little bit, but he couched it by saying, I'm going to ask you a cheeky question, or you can kick this question back at me, which made the interviewee feel at ease, that they didn't have to necessarily answer the question. They could pass it back. They could sidestep it if they wanted. And I think because of that comfort, they dove into those questions where potentially they might have felt less comfortable. So I think that was a really good way of structuring that. Moving on to our evaluators, the first of which was Stephen Thomas. I think Stephen did a great job of understanding both what Nina wanted to get from the speech and what the curriculum said the speech should accomplish. I did a bit of feedback was the background was a bit distracting, particularly as hands were coming in and out of the background. So that was a little bit distracting. So potentially something to think about going forward. I did like that he summarized the speech at the end and walked through the speech in more detail. Oh, was that a bell? I think I'm being dinged off. Yeah. So that is out of time for me. So I will hand over to our president, Sabrina. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Round of applause for you. So thank you all for a cracking